I brought Pauper text to the party. Pauper. I brought Pauper text to the party.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the PDH Pod, the one and only Magic the Gathering podcast dedicated to the total exploration of the Pauper Commander format. I am your host, Brad Drac V, and let's go around the table to check in on my co-hosts from the East Coast. First up, Dave the Dungeon Crawler Alcadron Vader. How are you doing this week?
I'm great. I'm loving the new nickname. That's,
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, that's
you
good.
earned it. You earned it, definitely. Game 2, you earned it.
Rilsa put in some work that game.
Big time work. That was impressive. She's always impressive, but I don't know. She's so powerful. Such a strong deck.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. How's things in Missouri?
Things are good. Today was a little rough. I worked out in the field, which isn't rough. I spend most of the time in my truck driving around, but I was in the big hills of Ozark Mountain Range wine country here in central Missouri, and I just don't do well on like county highways and like rural highways because they're nothing but curves and switchbacks and hills, and I just felt like I was on a roller coaster all day. So that was a little rough, but it was nice to be outside. It didn't get nearly as hot as they were calling for, but it's good scenery too, so can't complain too much.
Sounds nice.
And next up, we have our resident PDH PhD, Liam. How's the homework going?
Yeah, the homework's going, Brad. I have this assignment from last week where people had to create some kind of coding project related to the content area. And then this week, we're reviewing one of our classmates that was assigned to us. And my classmate that was assigned to me decided that they were going to recreate a segment of Flight of the Bumblebee with cat meows and dog barks and organize it all via code. And it's driving me up a wall.
How many times do you have to listen to that before you can like submit your approval or your diagnosis or whatever?
Well, I have to do a review and answer some questions about how I think the project is useful and how it could be applied to a classroom setting. And honestly, right now, the only real feedback I have is this is insane.
It sounds pretty insane.
I just, my head is on fire listening to this.
Yeah, that'd be a little much.
But yeah,
well, I think you can take a break from that for, I don't know, an hour or so, hour and a half while we talk some PDH. What do you think?
I'm definitely looking forward to that break.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to continue our conversation we started a couple episodes ago about what is and what is not allowed in the command zone by talking about the commanders themselves, actually. The roughly 3,800 creatures that have ever been printed at Uncommon seems a bit overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. But, if you look at it, try to look at the amount of playables in our format, just like any other Eternal format, that number becomes significantly smaller. I know we're going to break it down a little further than that, but I can understand some outsider point of views when they look at it and they're like, oh my God, any uncommon creature, that's just too much. But it really isn't when you sort of get down to the nuts and bolts of it all. But I think we can break it down. What do you think?
Hopefully we can.
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to it. This is a particularly timely topic. About a week ago, someone posted a introduction to PDH video on Reddit, not to the PDH subreddit, just to the general Magic subreddit. And it got a lot of feedback on the general Reddit or the general Magic subreddit for lots of people were saying, we don't like that it's any uncommon. We think it should be any legendary uncommon. And so there was some good discussion happening there. There's a high quality discourse, and I am ready to get back into that.
Excellent. Nothing like some good high quality discourse, not just poo slinging.
I feed on the discourse.
Well, Liam, since you feed on the discourse, why don't you start us off here? I see in the show notes you have a little bit of a brief history of EDH as a format itself, not specifically PDH. Why don't you give us a rundown of that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so when we were talking about the legendariness rule that Commander has and how people kind of compare that to our PDH, any uncommon, non-legendary rule, kind of one of the first things we hear is, well, why no legendaries? So I feel like it would be important of us to first talk about why there is a legend restriction in EDH. Like, why is it not just any rare or mythic creature? Why does it have to specifically be a legendary? So going over a brief history of EDH, in the early 90s, a guy named Adam Staley and his friends enjoyed a Highlander-esque format of their own design, something they wanted to do after Magic has begun to become a little more homogenized. People weren't just bringing their own homebrews to FNM and tournaments anymore. That people started running the same stuff. Now, local metas were vastly different, more different than they are today. But people at any given game store, half the people there might have this exact same deck. So him and his friends wanted a way to break into their bulk a little bit more, have some more fun with some of their older cards. So they were playing this Highlander format. In 1996, the set Legends came out, and Staley made Nicol Bolas the start of his Highlander deck, drawing his inspiration for his Elder Dragon Highlander format from actually the little pamphlets that came in the starter decks from the time, where they were encouraging players to come up with your own ways to play. In 2002, Staley introduced Sheldon Mannery, often talked about as the godfather of the format, to their early version of EDH. It wasn't quite what we know today. It was something along the lines of the whole starting table has 200 life points, and the life points are divided evenly amongst everyone, and a couple other different rules in that sense.
Wow.
In 2003, Sheldon takes this format and tinkers with it on the Pro Tour with other judges. They're playing it in between rounds. They're playing it, at the hotels at night or at the morning coffee, breakfast, whatever. They're just trying to mess with the format, and it becomes kind of like the hallmark judge format.
Right.
In 2004...
Yeah, I've heard that before, too. It's like the format of judges to begin with or whatever.
Yep, it was the format of judges. In 2004, Sheldon writes his first article for SCG on EDH. Now, he had been writing for SCG, Star City Games, a lot at the time, but this was his first article on EDH. In 2005, at a Pro Tour, I couldn't tell you which one, he introduces the format to some WotC employees. And in 2006, the EDH website is born and the rules committee is formalized. That was kind of a lot there in the early Magic years. And it takes a while, but one of the WotC employees that Sheldon had introduced the format to, Scott Larrabee, was doing a lot of advocacy on the inside, and that's how we got our first Commander product line launch from WotC in 2011. Notice that the name changed from EDH to Commander, because that's, EDH was the fan format. That's what had already previously existed, and for Wizards to really take that and make a product, they did have to change the name a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense.
But altogether, Commander is EDH. They've become one and the same thing. So that really begs the question of, why do we have this legendary restriction? Like, what does it have to do with the command zone? And the answer is because some guy thought it would be cool.
Yeah, I think that's what it absolutely boils down to.
I mean, really, like when you ask any Commander player, why do we have this legendary restriction? Most of them would probably tell you it's the way it is. It's the way it's always been. It's what the rules say.
Yeah, it's part of the rules. Yep.
And some of the more enfranchised players might be like, well, it really stems from the Elder Dragons from the set Legends, but they couldn't tell you who came up with that idea. And
right.
So
I'll be honest, almost all of this history is new to me. I had no idea about most of this.
I knew I was one of the ones that could have told you it was because of the Elder Dragons and Legends, but pre-2002 information I actually had to look up for this show. Because
I think I knew the legend stuff about the Elder Dragons, and then I think I knew roughly about when the Commander product line launched, obviously, and that was that was about it. The middle of the sandwich I didn't know anything about.
Yeah, it was kind of all the information for me too, which I found interesting because I was really looking into why is there that legendary restriction? Why? What is the purpose? And the reason that I came conclusively to was because a guy thought it would be cool, and then Wizards ran with it.
Now, do we know if Mr. Staley is still around, or what's he up to? Is he alive?
From what I could tell, Mr. Staley is still around. Actually, when they were looking to formalize the RC back in the early 2000s, at that point, Sheldon had lost track of him, and they had to track him down to answer some questions about Commando and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
But from my understanding,
Sheldon's definitely the face of the format, at least on social medias or what have you.
I do not believe that Staley actually was ever on the rules committee. I think he just helped formalize the format a little bit.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
My guess for why legendary commanders or non-legendaries are not allowed was going to be because Neanderthalic imbeciles hate Nephil. and don't want me to have fun.
No. This predates the Nephilim, Dad.
That is quite the answer.
I mean, it makes sense that it's wrong in hindsight, but I was pretty confident about it until about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
You delivered it. It was a good delivery.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
now that we know why we only play with legends in the command zone in EDH, Alk, do you want to give us a little history on PDH and why we don't have that same legendary restriction?
I would be delighted. I know a lot less about the history of PDH as you seem to know about the history of EDH. I think in many ways it is sort of like less well documented because it definitely wasn't started by just one person having an idea and going with it. It was
Right.
definitely like it was sort of co-created by many different separate people sort of like at once, and for the most part they all kind of used a different set of rules. Like some people said, only commons ever. Some people used the 30 life and 16 commander damage. Some people stuck with 40-21. So there were a lot of different people playing with this idea of EDH but only commons back in the early 2010s, like 2011 2012 ish. I got into it in 2013, just locally, and even then, it was very difficult to find any sort of information about it on the internet anywhere. It was very much just a local thing that we would talk about at the LGS and with our friends, but not. There wasn't an online community. There wasn't a website. There wasn't a unified rules board or anything like that. I actually didn't get involved with any of that or the home base until many years later. And the PDH home base was the first sort of online resource that I knew of that was going to sort of like unify the rules and sort of present a one standardized version of PDH.
Yeah, be like a dedicated landing page for people.
Exactly. But I can tell you for sure that in the year 2013, the reason that we didn't say you have to put a legendary in the command zone is because there were, I think, exactly 13 uncommon legendary creatures,
They were all from
and
legends,
every
right?
single one of them, they're almost all from legends. There's, I think, 2 or 3 from homelands.
Okay.
No, there's 4. There's 4 from homelands, maybe 5. But the one thing that they all definitely have in common is that they are all steaming hot garbage.
Well, some
Like
of them
the
are vanilla
best one.
creatures.
Most of them are vanilla creatures.
Aaron the
best
Relentless?
one,
Come on.
Aaron the Relentless, 5 mana, 5/2 haste, regenerates for 3,
Uh-huh.
Solid.
mono red. Yeah,
Solid.
Aaron is one of the best. Isan's Shade is one of the best. Before Dominaria got printed,
Wait, Isan's Shade is legendary?
Isan's Shade is a
I
legend.
don't
He's
think
a
I knew
summon
that.
legend.
I don't think I
Yep.
knew that.
Yeah. He was one of the first PDH decks I built, actually. So yeah, like prior to Dominaria gave us a bunch of uncommon legendaries because that was
Yeah,
the
for
theme
sure.
of the set. It was their apology for trying to make legendaries the theme of Kamigawa and just dropping the ball catastrophically.
Yeah, just blowing it.
Yeah, but we got a lot of uncommon legendaries in Dominaria. Since then, a lot of things have gotten downshifted, and now, like in the last couple of years, because of Commander Legends sets and us getting a couple signpost uncommons that are legendaries and other sets, like now, there's a really big spread of uncommon legendaries. There's a little over 200, almost 250, I think,
Of just legendaries.
just legendary uncommon creatures.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, but back then there was nothing. Like the reason I built Isan's Shade in 2014 or whatever was because I thought it would be funny to have a PDH deck that was also EDH legal, even though it was hot garbage.
Makes sense.
Yeah, 6 mana, 5/5 protection from white. Come on.
Yeah.
Where could you
Come
go
on, son.
wrong?
Yeah,
I-
exactly.
I really leaned into the hot garbageness of that deck by making the theme of it exclusively old border commons.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. I'm on board.
So it was only mono black cards printed before 2003.
That's awful.
So it was really, really bad. But it was so bad that I built 3 more of them for Aaron the Relentless, Revica Wizard Savant, and Rashka the Slayer. The other 3 legendary uncommons from Homelands.
I mean, those
Yep.
decks.
If you're interested in
those decks had to have cost like $5 a piece, right?
I just built them out of what I had.
That's even better.
They cost me nothing. But yeah, if you want to see what happens when those 4 decks play against each other, look up the Pals YouTube channel. There's a game of those 4 decks going head to head. It is
That's
one of the
amazing.
most painful things you can spend 2 hours doing.
It's got to be better
That's
than
great.
listening to Flight of the Bumblebee cat.
Next time you need a break from this homework assignment, go check out that YouTube video. Tell us which suffering is worse.
So pretty much for EDH, the legend rule is because some guy thought it was cool, but for PDH, the legendary rule is because the format would be unplayable if it was only legendaries back then.
Yes. Although I did hear story. I mentioned that, some people, lots of different people came up with this idea independently.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them went hard on this only legendaries rule, and they played with Gerard of the Closed Fist, and they played with Riven Turnbull, and they just resigned themselves to having garbage 7 mana vanilla 6/4s
They
in the
just
command
dealt
zone.
with it, huh?
Yeah, they were going for it, and I respect that.
So I guess it's no real coincidence that 2011, the first actual Commander paper product, is released by WotC, and that's about the time PDH started, right?
I think people might have taken a format that was gaining popularity and just turned it into Pauper.
Right, exactly. Like they saw some WotC support, it's getting played more often, and they're like, well, here we go. Let's make a Pauper version of it. And I'm not complaining, it just seems a little coincidental, I guess.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm trying to think about it. Like, the thought process at that time could have been, well, WotC supported us with some precons in 2011. In 2012, we got the Commander's Arsenal. In 2013, we got more Commander decks. If they keep this Commander deck thing going, what are the chances we eventually get some, updated Uncommon Legend?
Sure.
Let's just play with Uncommon Legends and see how long we wait out. Now, they unfortunately would have waited till 2018. So, it's a heck of a waiting game, but yeah, I could see the thought process.
I like to think that it was probably, like, I think that you're probably right, but in my mind, I prefer the story where someone looked at the Commander precon stuff in 2011 and 2012, and they thought, Wizards is absolutely going to unrepairably ruin this forever.
Uh-huh.
And they took refuge in something that Wizards couldn't profit off. That's probably not what happened, but I like to think that it's what happened.
No, I like it. It's a good theory. So yeah, that all sort of worked together. I think the timing worked out well. I like your theory, Dave, that they sort of sheltered the format from WotC's hands, if you will.
Yeah, it's probably not true, but it amuses.
And then there was quite a few years where there was not, like, if you look at the timeline of EDH, there was 2006 where you had the EDH website, and boom, the RC. It looks like on PDH there was quite a few years before an RC, a rules committee, came together. Is that correct?
Yes. So I've mentioned this elsewhere. The PDH rules committee didn't officialize itself until just a couple of years ago, around 2020, 2021-ish.
Mm-hmm. Heck, you've probably mentioned it on this show before.
I probably have. That was very much a thing of like we had the home base, which was, like you said, we wanted that to be like the landing spot for when someone has an interest and they go to Google and they say, what is PDH?
Mm-hmm.
We want them to sort of hit this website that explains the rules and the starting life totals, and we wanted sort of to uniformize things. And for a long time, we didn't see the need of an official rules committee. We just said these are the standard rules: 30 life, 16 commander damage, uncommon creatures. We didn't really start to think of ourselves as an official decision-making rules committee until we realized that the format needed a couple bans,
right?
And that we were in a really good position to provide that leadership, I guess.
Sure.
And so we just decided that it was us. We banned the cards. And
how many other of you are there on the committee?
There are 10 of us.
Okay.
Some of us are extremely forward-facing. You might know some of us. Myself, I'm very active on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Scarecrow, super active on Discord and Twitter and Facebook. Yep. Clay and Crash from last week's episode is part of the rules committee. There's a couple other people who are very, very not forward-facing. There's a guy who, his name is Derek on Discord, and I don't think I have ever seen him do anything in social medias. Maybe he's really big on Twitter and I just don't see it because I'm not on Twitter or Facebook or something. I don't know. No one knows what Derek does. There's a guy called Pod Commander who is the admin of the home base Discord and the website.
Okay.
There's a handful of others. Ruffigan, Memento Mori, Yalaran, Crash's co-conspirator on the tier list.
Okay, Yalaran is on there. Some pretty good minds on that board.
Yeah, we tried to get a really good spread of people who were very invested in the format and invested in making sure that it grew and succeeded and was balanced and fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I've interacted with every single RC member, but the ones I have been pleasantly surprised with. So I think that's a good group of people we have.
I'm generally.
Now, do you guys have like secret meetings, like behind the curtains and stuff, or is it just like when a topic comes up, you have to get together and talk about it?
We have a Discord channel that all of us frequent. So it started out, and I guess it's still named the PDH Homebase Management, because many of us got involved in this group because we were like moderators on the Homebase Discord.
Oh, yeah, you have mentioned that before. Yep. So you just sort of defaulted into the committee.
Yeah, like I ended up joining this group because I was going to be an editor for the articles that got posted on the website, and then I became a moderator for the Homebase, and then I just sort of like was conveniently placed and took on the role of RC member as well. So we still have this Discord server, PDH Homebase Management, where we meet to talk about things. The current discussion that's happening, which you'll probably hear a lot more about in really soon, is whether or not arena downshifts should be considered legal.
Oh, that set fire to Twitter for like a solid 36 hours.
Yeah. In fairness, I was stoking that flame a lot.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah. So no spoilers.
No.
It isn't.
Good.
It's being talked about. I think the decision has been made, just no one has publicized it yet.
Yeah, and that'll probably show up, well, probably everywhere once it's announced, but definitely everywhere. On the PDH home base for sure.
Yep. On the home, yeah, like I said, we have a lot of members that are very active across all the various different social spheres. So they will, when that decision goes out, it'll go out everywhere all at once, and you'll hear about it.
Yeah, it really will too. I remember when the decision was made on the backgrounds from Baldur's Gate. Yeah. It was like as soon as the decision was made, it was like the links were everywhere, the article was everywhere. It was awesome. Very, very good exposure, or transparency, I should say.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we try really hard to do is like we want to be very available and accessible to people if they have questions, if they have complaints. We want them to know exactly where to find us and like what our stances are and why we make the decisions we make. We try to be very clear and upfront about it.
Yeah, and it's the best thing you can do, honestly.
Yeah, and since like a non-trivial portion of the members of the rules committee were originally involved here as article writers and article editors, like I think we do a pretty good job of like professionally delivering the messages.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my self flattery there.
A little pat on the back. You deserve it.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
But yeah, so it sounds like that going over the brief history of PDH and the RC, that the reason we have no legend restriction in the command zone is because when the format was being started by a bunch of different people, the legendaries just simply didn't exist.
That's correct.
Yeah. And if they did, it was probably not something you wanted to play.
Yeah.
So a big question that we get asked now a lot is, now that the legendary uncommon creatures do exist, why don't you retroactively change the rules and make it so that only legendary uncommons are allowed? And the biggest reason we haven't done that is because of enfranchised players like Brad, who have built a lot of non-legendary decks right. and love their non-legendary decks and don't want to have to retire these decks that they built for the format they love because of a rules change that is basically at this point pretty much purely an aesthetic thing.
Yeah, it would have to be. It's literally just for that word, that legendary word. And, I could update my decks to fit, but yeah, I would prefer if it stayed the same.
I could probably update some of mine, but I have a lot of decks that really hinge on the fact that there is an ability on a non-legendary that is unique and I can't get anywhere else.
That makes sense.
So like
most of my decks are pretty terrible, so the commanders are kind of interchangeable. It's not a big deal.
Well, so, and something I want to touch on real quick is when you talk about going non-legendary, once you remove the background and the choose a background and the partner commanders, right? Because those are more often than not going to create two color combinations. Sometimes you'll get those monocolor, but more often than not they'll create two color. I think each monocolor has about 10 commanders. Some have less than that. And then when you get to the two color combos, I think barring the awful Legends and Homelands commanders, you get the same deal where like each color combo has, give or take, 10 until you get to 3 color, where you only have 1 for each of the shards and none for any of the wedges.
Right.
Whereas if we dip into that, any uncommon creature, you get color combos like Tima, who only have Bear's Companion. I'm sorry, Tima. But you get,
right?
but like other color combos get like, some of your wedges and a lot of your shards have like 5 or 6 options. And then we even have 5 color. So I really think that at this point in time, yes, the number of legends have increased. Again, barring partners and background commanders, there are 140. But I still that's not enough. Imagine if you only had 140 commanders to choose from in EDH.
Oh, it'd be miserable.
It'd be horrible.
Yep.
So
yeah, and I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it either, where if they had to be legendary uncommons, all of a sudden we don't really have 3 colors. We definitely don't have 4 colors. I hadn't even thought about that. That was a good point. That would be very sad.
You have 140 options, and 4 of them are from Homeland.
Pushing your Homelands agenda.
From Legends. But yeah, no, it really is in recent years when we started getting those huge cycles. Like, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms gave us 10 commanders. Commander Legends Baldur's Gate gave us 10 commanders. Dominaria, Kaldheim, Commander Legends gave us 10 commanders, 1 for each color combo. But you exclude those, and Simic has Eutropa from Theros 2 and Zamone from Strixhaven.
Right.
You exclude those, Boros has Quintorius. Like,
God.
Quintorius is amazing, so I don't even know why I said it like that. But like,
no. I do like him. It's just that's the only option. Like,
once you exclude all the sets that have given us these huge cycles of commanders, like you have Quintorius. Like, every Boros deck going to be that from the end of time?
Oh, I hope not. I love Boros. So I want more options than
it really is.
That.
While I understand the aesthetic kind of complaint from people looking at EDH into PDH, it really just doesn't make sense. And because we have that, any uncommon rule, the opportunities to brew that are created are immense. And I know you two can talk about this a lot more than I can, because I tend to just brew the legends because I'm lame.
I don't know if it's lame. You also like to play against EDH pods with your PDH deck, so you have to have legends brewed up or be able to swap out or whatever.
Yep.
No, I definitely do a lot of brewing, just like every other format I've played in Magic. It's mostly what I do. Like I usually, if I decide to have more than a couple paper decks built for a given format, I'll usually build like a hyper competitive one or 2, a tier 2 or 3, if you will, like more established but not that great deck, and then I'll have just a bunch of brews, and that's what I've done with PDH too. And yeah, I think if I was stuck to just the legendaries, like I could probably do it. I wouldn't have nearly the amount of fun. Like I feel like it would be one of those situations where I would try to build all these different commanders, but all the decks would end up the same, if that makes sense. Even if I haven't looked it up, but say there's 10 different legendary Dimir uncommon creatures, I feel like no matter what those abilities were, those decks would be the same.
Well, so it's actually funny you use specifically Dimir as your example, because a lot of them are very different commanders. You have like Arami and Rilsa and Rona, and they play extremely differently. But I will say, when you get to the Izzet or the Boros commandos, almost all of the Izzet uncommon legends care about casting spells.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I think Izzet's probably a better example for sure.
When you look at the Boros uncommon legends, there are 6 of them. How many care about equipment? 4 of them.
8 of them.
Yeah, 4 of the 6 care directly about equipment.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 of them care about auras as well, so you get a little bit of variety. It really is like there's not any variety when you boil it down to just uncommon legends.
Yeah, there's really not, and that's what I was saying. Dimir was a bad example, but you're right. If I walked up to a table and we could only use legendaries, and they're like, "Oh, what are you playing?" and I told them whatever legendary Izzet creature, they're pretty much gonna know what I'm playing. Know what's in my deck, know how I played it, how I brew it, what they're up against. Whereas having thousands of uncommons to choose from, granted, a very large percentage of those are not great. hardly playable, but
No, but
you
they're
just
fun.
exactly, but they're fun. You don't know what you're going to be up against. It just lends itself to so much potential, so much creative potential, I guess, if you will, because I'm a Johnny at heart, so how do you sort of approach the brewing aspect, or how would you approach the brewing aspect, Dave, if you could only use legendaries? Like, it wouldn't be very fun, right?
Yeah, I would like this format a lot less. I mentioned earlier, if you include everything with all the different, partner commanders and all the different background commanders that we have recently, the number of uncommon legendary creatures is
Skyrockets.
sitting right around 230.
Mm-hmm.
But if you compare that to the number of uncommon creatures that don't have to be legendary, you're at about 4,000.
Yep.
And there's this like almost 20 times more variety and options and choices. And that can be daunting. Like when you're looking at these things and you're thinking, how do I choose one? Just find one that you like. Like you don't have to look through all 4,000.
Yeah.
Like
just find one
pick
you
up
like.
an uncommon creature and you're like, this one's cool. Flesh taker. He's wearing a cow face. Like,
look at that.
Let's see what I can do with a flesh taker.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a bunch of decks that I have that just categorically do not have a legendary analog. Like I'm sort of looking through my deck list right now, and I'm seeing stuff like, I have a Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage deck, which is white-green tokens, and like I could make a white-green tokens deck with Kadira of the new Baldur's Gate, but it would be pretty different because Vitu-Ghazi Guildmage lets you populate at instant speed.
Mm-hmm.
So she lets you do really crazy stuff with mutate. She lets you do crazy absurd stuff with like slime molding. She lets you do crazy absurd stuff with myriad. And Kadira of the Small just gives you a lot of bunnies, which is super cool, but it's a different deck. It's going to play differently. So like you could get some analogs. You can get similar archetypes. But then you look at other decks and you're looking at like Azra Oddsmaker has no legendary analog.
No, 100%.
This is a red-black aggro deck that consistently delivering crazy beatings while also consistently discarding to hand size at end of turn. Like there's nothing else in the format that gives you this performance and this feeling. She's completely irreplaceable. Another format unique guy is Aethersworn Sphinx.
Yep.
Nothing else in the format will let you cascade off of a 9 CMC card while also reducing its own casting cost with affinity for artifacts, which reduces commander tax. Like,
what
legendaries
a wild
don't
pair
do
of words to put on a commander.
Right? Also flying.
Sure.
It can fly too. That's fine. But yeah, cascade affinity for artifacts that is a trip, and legendaries don't do that.
And I couldn't even see them necessarily putting affinity and cascade on a legendary uncommon in a set.
Yeah, I think that they would be worried about what happens to EDH.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So if they put cascade and affinity on a legendary, like that has huge ramifications for commanders where you're allowed to play with like Mana Crypt and Soul Ring. Like,
right. So by having
madness.
By having the limitations of only brewing with legends, we're also missing out on all these cool creatures that just have random abilities because they were just creatures, Yeah. And that's what I love about it. I love these silly ones that just do something completely off the wall, and that's part of the fun of it to me,
Yeah.
Gilder Baron has a legendary analog that has only ever been rare in the form of Vorel of the Hullclade. But Vorel of the Hullclade doesn't target certain card types. Gilder Baron can target any permanent. Vorel only targets like artifacts and creatures, I think. And also, Gilder Baron's ability is an untap ability, which lets you do some really weird stuff, where Vorel's ability is a tap ability. Again, you could draw a lot of parallels between the decks that you can make out of these, but if Vorel were legal, which he's not because he's rare, but like it still would end up being a pretty different deck for a lot of subtle reasons.
Yeah, and I think we sort of touched on it in our little podcast chat on Discord last night too. Like some of the problems I have with legendary uncommons is that the deck you're supposed to build with them is in their text box. You know, like there's very, very specific parameters that WotC had in mind for this card, for the deck they envisioned it in, and the commander itself tells you what to do or how to build it. And they're powerful. Sure, they're powerful and they're probably hella fun, but that's not necessarily where I want to be, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Makes sense to me.
Lately, I have found myself sort of staying away from commanders that essentially just build themselves.
Yep.
Like you said, you read the text box and you're like, oh, I know exactly which 60 cards to put in here.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Like, so does everyone else who's ever so does everyone else who knows how to read. So like,
yeah, exactly, 100%.
I'm gonna let one of them build the deck and like borrow it from them when I have the urge to play that specific deck, and then like not clutter up my shelves with it in the meantime. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep. Meanwhile, I'll be over here brewing, I don't know, some random creature from 17 years ago. It won't be as good as the
Sounds
legendary, but
He sounds shades and uncommon.
yes,
Homeland's
it is.
meta
Homeland's
is for
meta.
everyone.
Homeland's
Asian
is
Shade
not for everyone.
has quite a few printings. Masters 25.
I know that's where I knew it from was Masters 25. So
It has a
when he was
Hobby
saying-
Japan promo.
he's
Anthologies.
saying it's a legend from Homelands, I had to think, I'm like, isn't that just that random uncommon in Masters 25? Like,
Yep, that's the only alternate. The only time I had different art was Masters 25. Anyway, this is not the Ice and Shade tribute podcast.
That's next week.
Yeah, that's next week. That's episode 10.
all right, so I guess I have a couple things to say about this. Is what it sounds like you all are saying is when we allow non-legends in the command zone, we get different decks. We get, kind of similar archetypes, but different things, more, arguably more cool things that you can do. I will go ahead and put my piece in, is that, even though I brew with almost exclusively legends, I do agree with some of the points that, sometimes the decks get a little homogenous. Sometimes they even look like regular EDH decks. Just the quality, not the quality, but the content of the cards that you're putting in.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to build the commander as like a regular EDH deck, the cards kind of look the same. It does kind of limit you a little bit because like you all said, the commander tells you what to build, but it's also, you get 4 Boros commanders that do the same thing, right? You get 3 Simic commanders that all do the same thing. Like, it does get a little homogenous when you downgrade legends to the uncommon slot. They all have to kind of do the same thing.
Right.
So I do agree with that space. However, I disagree that they're unfun because I think all of my decks are very fun. So.
Oh no, they're definitely fun. They're more than fun. I don't like we were talking about Abdel.
They're just
like,
not
let's
for
just
you.
take let's just take Abdel for example. I would love to play it, but like Dave said, just give me the deck and play it because it's probably going to end up being the same that I would put together anyway. So just give me your paper deck and I'll play it, sort of thing. Like, I don't want to sit and try to brew Abdel when it's basically not been solved, but there's only a certain amount of builds that can exist with that card because of what it says and what it does.
100%.
But it still looks hella fun.
Yeah.
Not a lot of variance in it.
Yeah,
So-
thank you. That's a good way to put it.
So we've addressed the first thing that we usually see of, why non-legends? What perks or pros do you get from brewing with any uncommon? We've addressed that. But the other thing that I often see, and I know, Brad, you say you often see this, is rules issues.
Mhm.
Wouldn't allowing non-legendary creatures in the command zone create rules issues? And I think first, people need to understand what the command zone is. The command zone is not a special commander-only zone. We talked about this 2 episodes ago, right? When we talked about emblems and dungeons very briefly. The command zone is in every game of Magic you play. Whether or not it's used is up to the cards in players' decks. When an emblem is created by a planeswalker, it sits in the command zone. When you venture into the dungeon or take the initiative, it sits in the command zone. The dungeon itself sits in the command zone. When you're the monarch, it sits in the command zone, right? So this is a zone that's kind of a catch-all for the game, which means that the legendariness of a card isn't inherent to the command zone. It's just when you build a commander deck and you have your declared legendary creature as the commander, it starts the game in the command zone. It's just a different rule. So the legendary thing isn't really tied to that zone. But the other thing is that the rules issues that would be created by allowing just any uncommon creature in the command zone are often already rules issues that we experience with regular commanders.
Yeah, they're part of the existing game as it is.
Yeah, and we're gonna draw some parallels between mechanics and that exist on uncommon creatures that exist on legendary creatures as well of any rarity. So we can kind of show you that yeah, these would create rules issues, but they already exist. Like, they already exist in Commander. So it's not really anything special to the PDH format. But we're also going to talk about some specific cards that, because they were never designed for the command zone, they do get a little wacky. Mm-hmm. And it's fun.
And it is fun. It's very fun. It's not like wacky in the sense of like, oh, I slam my commander, I win.
Yeah.
No, not like that. It's just the way they function in the command zone is kind of strange.
Yep, 100%. And it really is best, in my opinion, to just take a step back and think about how the card might work. Like, don't always just jump to the most broken thing you can think of, right? Sometimes it is as simple as reading the card and understanding the mechanics.
Right.
And if you're ever in doubt, ask a judge. Like, that's what we're here for. But yeah, so for example, a mechanic that only works from hand, such as cycling, needs to be in the hand. You can't cycle from the command zone. Same thing goes for the ninjutsu mechanic, which recently came back in Kamigawa. You cannot ninjutsu from the command zone, right? You have to do it from hand. That's why we have Commander Ninjutsu on Yuriko. That way it worked from the command zone, and we saw how much of a mess that was.
Right, exactly.
So, like, these mechanics, yeah, they exist on uncommon creatures, and yeah, that could be in your command zone in PDH, but it doesn't break the creature, right? Like, these are things that already exist. I can't remember, does Satoru Umezawa have his own ninjutsu ability, or does he just grant it to everything else? I think he just grants it to everything else, right?
I would have to check.
But there's that mono blue ninja, Higyo, the Stillwind. He's got ninjutsu. You could never ninjutsu him from the command zone.
Satoru does not have ninjutsu.
Okay.
But Higure does, yes.
Exactly.
And Inkai's as well.
Thank you. I could not figure out how to spell it.
It really is just thinking about that. And then if something does have an alternate casting cost or mode, thinking of things such as like mutate or adventure, yes, that does work from the command zone. It works, in a slightly different way. It does have command attacks, right? Like, those things still apply. But yeah, it really is understanding the rules and how a mechanic works on a fundamental level to really understanding if the card is even broken in the command zone. So jumping to some more mechanical examples.
I did have a question, if I could interrupt you real quick, because I've literally never played against or brewed up an adventure creature deck for PDH.
Mm-hmm.
The adventure half, this is probably a silly question, the adventure half does not have its own command attacks.
It's not a separate commander tax.
It
is applied whenever you cast either half from the command zone.
So you don't need to keep track of how many times you've cast the adventure or how many times you've cast the creature.
Nope.
Like, they're not separate in that respect.
For adventure spells, for adventure spells and the creature, you only need to track how many times you've cast the physical card.
The cardboard itself.
Yes.
From the command zone.
Yes,
from the command zone.
If you cast it from the adventure zone, no tax is applied, no tax is accumulated.
Yep.
Nice.
Think of it like the legendary Deans from Strixhaven, right? The ones where it was legendary creature on both sides. They share a commander tax.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Perfect.
So drawing some more parallels between the PDH command zone and the EDH command zone. When it comes to the cycling mechanic, we have a lot more PDH commanders that have cycling built on them. There is only one in EDH. It is Yadaro, the Wandering Monster. And again, cycling works from hand, right? So if you really want to cycle your commander for whatever reason, you need to get it in your hand first. Moving on to the next mechanic, we have Morph. The Morph mechanic, right? You pay 3 generic mana to morph the card face down. When you do pay that 3 generic cost, if there is tax, that is when you pay it, not when you're flipping it face up.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a commander example of Morph would be Akroma. I think it's Angel of Wrath.
Angel of Fury.
Angel of Fury.
Fury is the red one.
Gotcha. Akroma Angel of Fury, the red one, does have that Morph example. Partner with, or the partner mechanic, we do have legendary partners from Commander Legends 1, and we do get partner with commanders because there were uncommon, non-legendary creatures with partner with in Battle Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And they just work like regular partners. They're just not legendary. I see a line there. I don't know who put that, but that was not.
Sorry.
And then, talking about commanders that are a little bit different, in PDH. We have MDFCs and that are an uncommon creature on the front side and a land on the back. These come from Zendikar Rising. There's 5 of them, 1 for each mono color. In PDH, your commander must be a creature spell, which means you can run these as your commander. However, from the command zone, you can only cast that creature side.
Right.
Because you can't play your commander in PDH, you cast your commander.
And that's actually a pretty common question I get for
Yep.
for people new to the format or just wanting to learn about it or whatever. That's a very common question.
Yep, absolutely. And, if you got these commanders in your hand or in your graveyard somehow and were allowed to just play them as a land, you could play them as a land then. But from the command zone, it has to be the creature. As such, because it has to be a creature spell, Dryad Arbor's original printing wasn't uncommon. It cannot be a commander in this format because it is a land. Therefore, it's not a spell.
Right.
The evoke mechanic, the mechanic where it's an alternate cost, when it comes into play, if its evoke cost was paid, you sacrifice it immediately.
Muldrifter.
Yeah, Muldrift is a big one. I don't believe there are any legendary creatures that have evoke on them. I believe it's all non-legendary creatures. You can activate evoke from the command zone because it's an alternate cost.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes for mutate, same goes for bestow. These are just alternate casting modes. Tax does apply if you choose to cast them like that. But, you're not really breaking a format in half by doing this.
Mm-mm.
Right? You evoke Muldrifter for 3, sure you get 2 cards, but then you have to do it for 5, and then 7. Like, it does
exactly.
get out of hand.
Because there's
when I first started playing, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, there's that I can think of, there's nothing on an uncommon creature, no mechanic anyway, that just inherently, breaks the game. That's just not the nature of uncommon creatures. So,
yeah, uncommon creatures...
Evoke and mutate and bestow and all this stuff, yeah, you can cast it from the command zone. You can do it however much you want or however much mana you have, and it's fine. It may be a little more to keep track of, but that's about it.
Yeah, the 2 quick things I'd like to add are, when I first started playing, there was a lot of talk about how Shriekmaw was overpowered and should be banned because you could evoke it from the command zone as just this repeatable removal spell. And then
That's
I actually
amazing.
played against someone who was doing it, and he, at the expense of not ever having access to a commander creature that helps your deck and lets you do things, he did get to play a removal spell 3 times.
Yeah, he did the
for
thing
2
he
for
wanted
6.
to do.
Yeah, 2, 4, 6, and then you're not gonna play a terror for 8.
Yeah.
You're not gonna play a 3/2 with fear for 11.
Right.
He killed a couple of my creatures. I was like, okay. And then
Just wait till turn 6 and the game is mine.
right. It's not a big deal. The other thing I want to add really briefly about certain concerns I've heard from any commander in the or any uncommon creature in the command zone is on the topic of lands from the command zone. When people try to bring this up, the question is always, if my commander dies a whole bunch, can I still play the land for free? Because what do you do for a commander tax on a land? And I say, well, you can't play the land from the command zone, so that's a moot question.
Right.
But then the follow-up is always, what about the legates from Mercadian Masks? There's a cycle of Rushwood Legate, Saparazan Legate, which all have this condition on them that allows you to, if you control an island and your opponent controls a mountain, you can cast the spell for free.
Mm-hmm.
And people are saying, oh, that means no commander tax, right? No.
No.
Alternate casting costs never mean no commander tax.
Yeah, free
Always
is
have to
still
pay the
just an
commander
alternate
tax.
cost.
Yeah. The commander tax gets added to that afterwards. You still have to pay the commander tax, even if you skip the mana cost. Commander tax gets added afterwards.
Right.
So
0 plus 2 is still 2.
Exactly. That is me chiming in on the lands evoke discussion.
Yep, and for
pass it back to Liam.
And for anyone that may be confused about that is actually about the legates. That is actually just the rules on the order of casting a spell and paying costs. It really is determine how much you're going to pay, which part of, the first step of doing that is, are you paying the regular cost or are you paying an alternate cost?
Right.
And after you've decided that, it says, are there any additional costs? And then it asks, do you have any cost reductions? And then it goes on a list of steps. But, that additional cost does come after the fact you've determined you're paying an alternate cost. And commander tax is an additional cost. So that's just the kind of technical background behind what Dave just said there.
Yep.
I'm not a judge, but I want to see if I remember the 4 steps of casting correctly. You determine whether you're doing the main cost or an alternate cost. Step 1 is main or alternate.
Yep.
Step 2 is additions.
Okay.
Step 3 is reductions. Step 4 is Trinisphere.
That sounds right, but I think there are more steps. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But what you just said is in the correct order.
Okay.
But I think there are other steps. I think there are steps between reduction and Trinisphere.
Yes.
But I could be wrong.
the commander tax is always an additional cost, so it comes in on step 2 of that, whereas the alternate costs would be step 1. So even if you have the legate and you have the right mana situation with you and your opponents, you can pay 0 for the alternate cost, and then there's a cost addition applied to that after.
Yep. And for anyone trying to determine what Alec and I are saying, we're saying a legate, spelled Legate, if you want to plug that into Scryfall.
Yeah, there's one for each monocolor from Mercadian Masks.
I'll be honest, I never learned how to pronounce this word. This is one of those words that I've only ever seen in writing.
Legate.
Yeah, that's why I'm sitting here
Legate.
so I'm sitting here like I don't know if these people know what these cards are.
Yeah.
Legate,
Legate?
something.
I mean,
Sure.
I'll give the listener the benefit of the doubt. You know, they may have already pulled them up, but
Yeah,
you know,
good.
some might not. But yeah, so moving on from the 1-to-1 examples of EDH to PDH, there are a couple creatures that when people kind of look at them, they're like that can't possibly be right. Or you know, this is their prime example of breaking the format. Which, if this is your prime example of breaking the format, I got to be honest, there are more broken things you can honestly be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And probably nothing to worry about then.
And those more broken things are, you know, with Tatiova, so that's a legendary creature.
Mhm.
So the first one I want to talk about is a card called Bastion Protector. Some of you may know this card, but some of you may not.
Love
It is a human soldier. For 2 and a white, it is a 3/3. It comes from Commander 2015, and it recently got its first reprint in the Midnight Hunt Commander decks. Both of those printings were rare. However, on Magic Online, it had a promo uncommon printing. Therefore, it is a legal commander in our format.
I love unification.
Yeah, and you know, 3 mana 3/3 human soldier is pretty good. But then it has this interesting line of text of commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have indestructible.
Huh, but Liam, Bastion Protector is your commander.
Oh, so it is, Brad. What that means is that Bastion Protector is actually a 3 mana 5/5 with indestructible.
In mono white.
Yes, in mono
No
white.
big deal. This is fine.
Yeah, so, you know, if you're playing, you know, mono white Voltron, probably with some equipment enchantments, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But, like, it's not broken. Like, yeah, a 3 mana 5/5 with indestructible is well above rate for an uncommon, but, you know, there are things that deal with that. We have plenty of exile removal in the format. We have plenty of bounce in the format. Could you imagine someone enchanting this 3 times and putting equipment on that and it gets bounced? Because we don't have hexproof. We don't have hexproof. We have
Vapor
Shroud.
Yeah, we have Shroud.
But like,
Lignify?
yeah, exactly. Like, turn it into a tree.
Yeah.
I'm just
Oubliette.
like, yeah, this isn't. Ooh,
Right.
Oubliette would be rough. But like, this isn't impossible to deal with. It's just an above rate creature. And honestly, when you look at things like Gary being allowed in the command zone,
Yeah.
this doesn't scare me.
And I think
Yeah.
that kind of speaks to what you're just talking about is they're powerful, but they're not unbeatable. Like one of the, I don't know if they're trying to be smart or whatever, but one of the rebuttals I get to any, you know, oh, you can use any, you know, uncommon creature. That's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, you know, it's not a huge deal, whatever. And they're like, well, I just can't imagine that. Like Slippery Boggle, that would just be unbeatable. I'm like, okay, I'm not getting into this, but it's not.
Yeah.
Like,
You're looking
it's
for
not
the black
even
player
close
at
to the
the
best
table.
deck. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
played against Slippery Boggles on Saturday.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
good match.
Yeah.
It was a good
And-
match. I was afraid. I thought I was going to lose.
And I do want to say something is like when you're looking at PDH from an EDH lens, something like Slippery Bogle could appear unbeatable. But
Mhm.
an interesting fact about PDH is that, you know, the format is more grindy than EDH by a significant margin, in my opinion.
Oh, yes, for sure.
And the format also has a suspicious lack of, you know, nuclear buttons, you know, warheads. It doesn't have board wipes. Like, yeah, you know, I am an advocate for saying, you know, PDH does have a lot more board wipes than it seems to appear. You just have to be creative about it.
Right.
But like realistically, like Wrath of Gods and Blasphemous Acts don't exist. Just the you know, pay 5-6 mana, it's all answered no matter what. We don't have that. So a byproduct of that is a lot more removal gets run. And I mean a lot.
A
Like
lot.
any given EDH deck I run might have like 2 to 3 board wipes and then 3 to 5 single target removal. And I know I run light on removal, but that's because I like battle cruisering Magic and I just remove the thing that's going to win the game on the spot.
Yeah.
But like my PDH decks, I think run almost an average of 20 removal spells.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
you know,
I've
lot
been
of them
told
tend
before,
to be,
like when I first got it. Sorry, when I first got into the format, I was talking to Scarecrow, to Paul, and I asked him something about a deck or how many removal spells is too little or too many or whatever, for this black X whatever I was building. He's like, well, start at 6 and go up from there.
Yeah. Realistically, I probably run a lot more than I need to. But, I'm also running an EDH meta where I don't have board wipes in my deck, so I need to be able to answer things more consistently. But, saying that, I looked at a lot of PDH lists online, and they do have 10 to 15 removal spells. Triple what an EDH deck has to make up for that lack of board wipes. So, really, these things like Bogle were like, oh, you need to remove that 3-4 times. Yeah, but if, you and your 2 other opponents that are facing down that Bogle each have 10 removal spells, you have 30 removal spells.
Yeah, well, you're probably okay.
The thing that makes Bogle scary is that it's mostly immune to the removal spells. But the thing that makes it reasonable is you can always race the Bogles.
Yeah.
Like, Bogles has the gas and the resiliency to just outrun one player pretty effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 2 murder you because you're a huge threat.
Huge threat, yep.
And if you're in a 1v1 situation, if you're doing Pauper dual commander, like Bogles is sort of more threatening then, but even then, things can outrace it. But it's not going to outrace the 3v1. It's fine. It's a pretty balanced actually.
And that's for the Bogle example, but realistically, any commander that is poised as a problem in the command zone, we have 30 to 45 removal spells between 3 players. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
If you want a really comprehensive list of creatures that are really problematic in the command zone, please check out Crash's tier list and listen to last week's episode.
Yeah, there you go.
Is
perfect.
Very thoroughly researched.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that can outrace Bogles, I don't have this deck built, but theoretically it's a favorite of mine. It's called Loyal Apprentice. Let's talk about some Loyal cards.
Yeah. So the Loyal cycle from Commander 2018, 1 for each color. I believe Commander 2018 was the last year they did a full cycle of Planeswalker Commanders, right?
I don't pay attention.
Sounds about right.
That's Windgrace and Estrid and that gang. But yeah, so the Loyal cycle. These bring the Lieutenant mechanic with them.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time that this mechanic appeared at Uncommon. The previous time we saw them was, I believe, 2014 or 2015, but they were all at Rare. And the lieutenants are all, about 2 to 5 mana, about an on-rate creature for whatever mana cost they are. They all have a keyword, an evergreen keyword. The white one has Vigilance, blue is Flying, go through that. But then they all have this Lieutenant ability, which reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, do a thing. Mm-hmm. And, you get some things like Loyal Drake, where it's like, okay, you draw a card. And Loyal Subordinate, where it's like, each opponent loses 3 life. Okay, fine.
That one's big.
But the 2 that I really want to hit on are the red and the green one. The red one, like Alcadron just mentioned, is a 2-mana 2/1 with haste. And it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and that token gains haste until end of turn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if Loyal Apprentice is your commander, does the Lieutenant ability trigger? Yes.
Yep, because you do control your commander.
Yeah. The question is, do you control your commander? Well, yes.
Ask the question, you get the answer.
Yeah, so you get the effect.
Right.
The other one I want to talk about real quick is Loyal Guardian. 4 green for a 4/4 trampling rhino, which says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Yeah, that's not target creature. That's not target creature. This thing ran Lapse in my Rayhan Ishai deck when I had that years ago, and it runs Lapse in PDH.
Yep, and all it asks is to not be in the command zone.
You make a deck with Loyal Apprentice, or Loyal Guardian is the Rhino?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Right, so Loyal Guardian, 35, 36 lands, 35, 36 mana dorks, and then a couple trample spells.
Yeah.
That's it. That's your whole deck.
Yep, that's it.
You need so little here.
Because the mana dorks eventually
you don't have
get
to worry about
point of
making room for
being
draw
there.
spells because it's green and we don't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those big fancy draw spells in EDH don't exist in PDH.
Yeah, that's
it's kind of rough. That is a little
You
rough.
can get some good ones in there.
They're all blue.
Lead the Stampede.
That's a good one.
You meet
Is
in a
that
tavern.
common? Is Lead the Stampede?
Oh,
common?
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a rare.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, I don't play
Lead the
green.
Stampede is common.
I don't play green that much.
Yeah, it first showed up in common
What?
and Iconic Masters. It was an uncommon outside of that.
I have a
Winding
singular...
Way is the other really good
Winding Way is a very good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like the Legate cycle, these are one for each monocolor, except these I think are a little better than the Mercadian Masks Legates.
I think the white one is interesting. I do want to talk about that real quick because we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 4-mana, 3/4 with Vigilance. And
Unicorn.
while I don't think it's anything fancy in EDH. You know, it's a unicorn, like Brad just said, so it goes in the unicorn decks. But in EDH in particular, I don't think it's, you know, particularly interesting. But in PDH, it says if you control your commander, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control this turn, and other creatures you control gain vigilance until next turn. So you just get to swing with white weenies and fog your table
every turn.
Every turn.
That's
Like,
one of the
I
problems
think-
with running mono white decks is you're scared to attack unless you have a fog in hand.
I think there are definitely better mono white commanders you could be running. But
Probably.
like just the threat of building a board of weenies or small dudes with keywords, and then giving them all vigilance and unable to be killed through combat is fascinating.
Yeah,
As
it
just a
really
con-
is.
I saw a Loyal Guardian deck. Is the Unicorn the Guardian? Or is the Rhino the
Unicorn.
Guardian?
Yeah, it's
Loyal
just loyal
Unicorn.
unicorn.
Yep.
God. Okay. I'm like 0 for 2 on these names. I saw a Loyal Unicorn deck once that was exactly like what Liam just described, just white weenies, except it ran every single legal common with banding.
That's
Oh my
fantastic.
So that-
god.
So that on the clapback, like when someone tries to attack you and your whole board has vigilance, you just go like, I block with this, I redirect all of the damage to the one guy with banding, and then I give him protection. Like
That is wild.
it's just a wall that no one can ever get through.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It was very funny.
But yeah,
That's
like,
awesome.
but yeah, so pulling it back in, you know, the loyal cycle, it's your commander. So yeah, you get the bonus. You know, these things weren't designed to be in the command zone, but because that format has that special rule where it allows them, they become a lot stronger.
Yeah.
And
and yet they're still not broken.
Yeah, none of them are terribly broken.
Mhm.
They all just have, you know, they basically lose their lieutenant ability, and they just have, at the beginning of combat on your turn, do this thing.
Yep.
Which makes them all inherently aggro decks, which I find fascinating as well. Yeah, and then moving on, there's one other one that I specifically do want to talk about, and then I'll open it up to any examples y'all have. Peregrine Drake, I see this one a lot. You know, it was printed at common in Eternal Masters, so it is legal to just run in the 99.
Mm-hmm.
However, all of its other printings are uncommon, so it's definitely a commander. And, you know, everyone knows the Drake combos. You have Drake and the Soulbound guy that you pay 2 mana and flicker. Or you have Drake and any flicker spell plus an Archaeomancer effect, right? And then you make infinite mana.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What are you going to do with it? Like, just
In
gonna
mono
have
blue,
infinite-
what are you going to
Yeah.
do with that?
in mono blue, what do you you know your usual answers of, well, I'm going to cast Altar of Dementia or Altar of the Brood. No, you're not.
Not here.
I'm going to have Impact Tremors in mono blue.
In mono blue.
Like,
Oh
like
wait,
don't
you
get me
can
wrong.
cast Ulamog's Crusher.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are definitely win cons to be had here. You have, you know, Tidal Board. You have Capsize and just bounce everyone's boards, which is not really a win, but it just says everyone else loses.
Yeah.
I think the typical line involves
Yes.
casting Whispers of the Muse until
Yeah.
you draw into a second Archaeomancer and a Compulsive Research, and then you Compulsive Research everyone to death, or Deep Analysis everyone to death,
Oh.
maybe.
Yep,
Yep.
you could do
There you
that.
go.
One
you
of the
could,
draw spells that says target player.
You could do Sage's Road Denizen, which just mills
Yeah.
everyone because you have infinite speed.
yeah.
Yeah.
You have
can mill 'em
Sunscorched
out.
Desert. You have Sunscorched Desert, which is just pinging.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Whenever you're running Peregrine Drake, when do you play it? The turn you combo off. That's when you reveal you have Peregrine Drake.
Right. Because everyone
Peregrine
thinks you
Drake
probably
is your-
have it, but
yeah.
they don't know for sure.
Exactly. But if Peregrine Drake is your commander, you're telegraphing from turn 0 that you have one of your 3 or 4 card combo pieces already. And
Yep.
here's the other fascinating part, is when you're winning with the Peregrine Drake combo, you have a bunch of different outlets, like we just described. You have infinite mill, infinite draw, you have infinite damage, right? Archaeomancer effects, we have, I think, 4, maybe 5 at common. For the Ghostly Flicker effects, we have 2, I think it's Ghostly Flicker and Displace.
Only
There
one
might-
of them hits lands, so if you're trying
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
the
Sunscorched
thing-
Desert, yeah. So you have 2 there. And you've got a bunch of tutors, sure. You have all your Transmute, you have Merchant Scroll. But do you know how many Peregrine Drake variants we have? None. At least
Right.
none that are playable outside of a 2-color deck, because if you're going to run Cloud of Fairies, you need a bounce land to be mana positive.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, yeah, Peregrine Drake is a well-known combo piece and could be assumed to be a problem. But once you're telegraphing that you have a combo piece from turn 0, and it is the irreplaceable combo piece, and it goes back to the command zone if it's killed or countered, yeah, you're arch enemy. I don't see that playing any other way.
Yeah, you're probably not going to get the combo off.
There are other decks that are more the arch enemy, I think.
Yeah.
I would target priority Tatiova over Peregrine Drake, but
Well,
I would be
yes, but
scared of the Peregrine Drake.
Assuming there's no Tatiova in the pod, right? Assuming there was no other deck that's going to be running this combo in the pod, which, you know, would be quite frequently, assuming you're not in a CDH scenario. Like, you're arch enemy. There's no other way to put that. Be prepared to be running 40 counter spells is all I gotta say. You're running your combo shell, the tutors for it, and counter magic. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Peregrine Drake's not a problem. I'm sorry. It's not.
As a commander, it's really not. Even as part of the 99, it's not a super problem.
Yeah.
It's just more comes out of nowhere.
Definitely not when it's in the 99, because like I said, once you deal with it, it doesn't go to the command zone. It doesn't go back to hand unless you bounced it. Like,
yeah,
you count it or you kill it. Like, the combo's done. So that's just my 2 cents on Peregrine Drake.
No, those are shiny cents. Those are shiny pennies. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are there any other commanders y'all have examples of that seem to get a little more broken, but, you know, once you think about it, it's not really?
I don't know about broken, but not really. There's a couple interesting situations that I want to mention, as long as we're bringing up specific commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of them is a category that I think PDH sees a lot more of than EDH, and that is commanders that you want to go to your graveyard.
Okay.
Things with Unearth. Like if you're looking at Sidraxis Spectre is a really cool control shell Grixis commander where you can be really aggressive with this 3/2 that makes people discard, and then you can just let it die and then unearth it, and then after it's unearthed, then you send it to the command zone.
Well, and that's
very cool stuff you can do there.
That's the cool thing about what you were just talking about is we have a lot of commanders that care about the graveyard because a lot of these uncommon creatures were built to work with the higher rarity creatures. You know what I'm saying? Like in their own set, they were made to work with the mythic that cared about you sacrificing creatures or cared about this creature in the graveyard. Well,
yeah.
You know, now we have that ability on the uncommon, which leads to maybe not that strategy that it was built for 10 years ago, but a whole different one or a whole different game plan for PDH.
Yeah. Another one of my favorite examples of this is called Fathom Fleet Swordjack. This is a pirate from the original Commander Legends. It doesn't have Unearth. It has Encore, which is a little bit like Unearth, but you get a token copy for each player, and you get to attack everyone all at once. So Fathom Fleet Swordjack is a really interesting case because when you play it, it has an attack trigger that deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to the defending player, which is monstrous. You can easily swing for like 8 or 9 damage with this thing.
Yeah.
And you end up in this weird situation where if someone tries to block and kill it, it becomes more threatening, and you get to encore it on your next turn and attack everyone all at once. So like, who's gonna block? Who's gonna try and kill this? Like, no one wants to kill it. They're just gonna keep taking like 8 to the dome every time it attacks. So very cool things you can do with Fathom Fleet Swordjack. There's also some cool things with Disturb. From some of the Innistrad sets.
There are some very cool things going on with Disturb. And actually, I think I just did a quick search, and if I did it correctly, there's no mythic that has Encore. Oh, no, there is one. The Phyrexian Triniform.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it.
I think it's funny. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Azorius has Brine Comber is a little body that continues to make additional bodies every time you enchant something. It's very cool. There's a farmer that a friend of mine has a deck built with this farmer. I forgot what it's called, but it's like a 3/2 that taps something every time you play a card from the graveyard, and then it turns into like a 2/1 with flying or something. I don't know. It's a very cool deck that really focuses in on graveyard things.
Oh, is it Distracting Geist?
Maybe.
Whenever Distracting Geist attacks, tap target creature?
No.
No.
It's a farmer that comes in and mills you 2 cards, and then it disturbs into a spirit that lets you tap a creature anytime you cast something from your graveyard.
Oh, Devoted Graphkeeper.
That one.
Yep. He enters, you mill 2, and whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, you tap a creature you don't control. That's awesome.
Yeah, it does some really cool stuff. Lets you play around with those. The last actual threatening commander I want to talk about is Parcel Beast, because a mutate
is a beast.
Bizarre as hell and does really unintuitive thing. And there's a competitive deck that uses Parcel Beast really effectively.
A
And
competitive deck that's actually ranked higher than Slippery Boggle.
Yes. Yeah, Parcel Beast is, I think, tier 2. Boggle's, I think, tier 3, according to Craft.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of the infinite lines in the Parcel Beast deck is animating one of your lands with Life Spark Spellbomb.
Okay.
And then tapping it and untapping about 1 million times for infinite mana by using something like Freed from the Real.
Yeah.
Cast right onto it. And then mutating Parcel Beast onto your land to try and close out the game by drawing your deck until you get a Viridian Longbow. And
my God.
yeah, the idea of mutating a Parcel Beast from the command zone onto a land that has been animated with a Life Spark Spellbomb is
and then you equip
bananas. And then you equip it.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
This is what we wouldn't have if we had to have legendaries. We wouldn't get this.
Exactly. Which is, it's funny to me because EDH has mutate in the command zone, and I think that's exactly as much of a nightmare as it is here.
So this isn't definitely.
Yeah. So this isn't like, it's not like EDH doesn't get mutate in the same way that EDH doesn't get, like, you know, the weird cyclers or the weird ninjutsu guys.
Yeah.
Both of those are examples of things that EDH does have. I don't know what I was talking about, but it's just a weird thing where it's actually a very high tier deck that just does bizarre things with the command zone because we have opened it up to uncommon creatures, not just legend. There are no uncommon legendary with mutate, and this isn't something we could do in PDH without that clause. So
yeah, exactly.
I like it a lot.
I'm still trying
that
to
whole mechanic would be gone to us.
Yeah,
that's wild. Yeah,
what were you saying, Liam?
Yeah,
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the Parcel Beast combo.
This was literally the first time I ever heard of it. Like, I've seen the decks and I've heard people talk about how much of a powerhouse it is, but this is the first time I've actually consumed the combo. That's wild.
It just sounds like Malcolm Kedis with extra stat.
So it's the thing I like about it is that this, what I have described is like one of the 6 or 7 different combo lines that you typically run in the Parcel Beast deck, and it's more of a backup plan than plan A.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but it is a line that you can run.
Yeah, but it's something you can actually pull off. It's not just like I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah,
I definitely don't have any recommendations like that. I'm still like I don't know. Like, every day I look for random commanders I've never heard of, or I'll listen to old podcasts like Limited Resources or some other podcast that does, like, at the time when their set review was brand new 4 years ago. But I like to listen to those old episodes to, like, just listen about the cards and hear about how they graded them back then and this and that. And LR does the thing where they do the commons and uncommons together, and then on a different episode they'll do rares and mythics. So I always listen to the commons and uncommons, obviously. And sometimes I'll hear ones from sets that I just never heard of before, and that'll, like, spark a new brew or whatever. And sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. Like, I'll get it all put together in my head, and then I'll look on Moxfield, and there maybe is only 1 or 2, and then the more I think about it, it's like, oh, well, probably because it sucks, and the initial hype is over with, but at least it's like the experience of finding that new commander. I think that's what I like the best about not being restricted by the legendary rule, is just the sheer number of options we have, basically.
And honestly, if I'm going to introduce someone to the format, when I say, you can choose any non-legendary creature that's uncommon, and the first thing I get is like, well, how many of those are there? Well, there are almost 4,000.
Yeah.
Well, how do you choose? Well, you got a couple different steps, and this is kind of how I've seen the most success and the most kind of I want to call repeat customers of them building more and more decks in my LGS. My first question is, do you have a favorite set? If they have a favorite set, I tell them to go to Scryfall, look at that set, filter for just uncommon creatures, and find one they like.
Yep.
Because if they have a favorite set, they're going to have a lot of connections to a lot of creatures, or a lot of spells. If one of those connections happens to be an uncommon creature, that will spark that brewing process immediately. If they don't have a favorite set, or they have like a couple different favorite sets, because their favorite plane is Ravnica, but we've been to Ravnica 20,000 times.
Right.
I'll be like, okay, well, you like Ravnica. What's your favorite guild? Okay. So, their favorite guild is Rakdos. So what I'm going to do at that point is, I will be like, okay, let's look at the Ravnica sets that have Rakdos in them, and let's look at those uncommon creatures. And there might be like 10 of them, but now they have it narrowed down from 4,000 to 10. And that becomes a lot less daunting.
Yep.
Often, if they say they have a favorite guild, I just tell them look at the guild mages.
Yeah, that too.
Because that's the thing is if you ask someone, well, do you have a favorite color combo? If what they say is where you guide them next. If they say, oh yeah, I love blue red. Like, okay, when did you start playing Magic? Let's look for a creature around then, right? When did you start drafting?
Something you're familiar with. Yep.
Yeah, but if they're like, well, I like Izzet. It's like, okay, what Ravnica set was the newest after you had started playing?
Right.
Because that to me says they have that mental connection. They're a little more enfranchised, right? Kind of guide them in different directions. And sometimes it's like, my best friend, I recently got him to build a PDH deck, and he is in love with Innistrad, specifically with Shadows. So I shoved him over to Scryfall. I was like, look, you just got to look up Shadows over Innistrad, right? You got to look at the uncommon creatures and just pick one, right? And what he came up with, right, is he found the Accursed Witch.
Oh,
right?
that thing that turns into a curse?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that thing is so cool.
That is cool.
And like, I'll be honest, the deck is awful. But
yeah,
but
sure.
It has him thinking about other commanders that he can build. And he's looking, I think right now, at one of the Commander Legends Baldur's Gate commanders to build.
Nice.
But like, even like just, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, he looked at me, he's like, yeah, this witch deck is terrible, but I love it. And it's my child, and I'm building more. And I was like, yep, mission accomplished. There you go.
And heaven forbid you ever have to tear it apart. You'll be out like $30.
Not even.
Right.
I think he built it out of the store's bulk. And when he presented them with a pile of commons, the dude was just like $5.
Yeah, give me $5. You're good.
Yeah. Like it was it like you may not have an LGS like that. You might have to like go through a computer system and start looking, or you may have a collection deep enough to just build. But like if you have kind of that EDH knowledge, just look what's legal. Like honestly.
Yep.
And then go to your favorite set.
If you don't, our commons go back 30 years now. So even if you don't have the bulk to like perfectly optimize your whatever Vizkopa Guildmage deck, you can get it pretty close and then just tune it as you go along.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be, a power level of 7, 8, 9 right out of the box.
Oh yeah, no, definitely doesn't.
To compete, no.
And I think that's where people kind of get this a little mixed up with the EDH. Like when you build your first EDH deck, right? We have this problem where like older precons weren't on par with what people were building when they were ordering cards. And newer precons, depending on the precon, are pretty much there. They might need a couple upgrades and they'll be pretty on level. The Wizards is definitely fixing that issue. But, people are trying to play on a certain perceived power level. The perceived power level of PDH is have fun. Like, a lot of people say that for EDH. That's what they want to do is have fun. But a lot of people also get butthurt when they lose in PDH, which it's a game. It's a game, I'll give you that. But like PDH, I think everyone's just on this idea that, the commons, they're a little weaker than what we're normally playing with, but there is still some power there. But when we agree to just play with the commons, we're agreeing to just take a step back from the game and just enjoy each other's company. And I think that's where you get a lot of people with it, is really just pick your favorite set. What is going to have you interested in trying this one?
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Strixhaven, but today I realized that somehow in the whole existence of Strixhaven, I guess I've either forgot or never knew that Killian existed, and now that's all I want to do is build a Killian deck.
Brad, that hurts. Strixhaven is like my favorite set in almost.
Well, to be fair, when Strixhaven released, or right after it released, I thought Strixhaven was 2 cards: Teach by Example and Serpentine Curve. I thought that was the whole set. But yeah, Killian, that's like all I want to do. I want to have another Orzhov deck that isn't very good, but I'm just like obsessed with it.
There's a non-trivial number of people firmly believe that Killian has competitive legs.
I feel like that, but I know that I'm such like a hopeful, like every one of my decks is going to be good. Like I feel like I'm just putting that influence on Killian, but I honestly do. I feel like there's potential there that he could be somewhere on a tier 3.5 or 3 or something.
He does an interesting mix of like Voltron-ish things.
Yeah.
By reducing the cost of like powerful auras you want to put on him, and also like control things.
Removal spells,
of all your removal,
Yeah, I spent some time today like looking on Scryfall at all the white and or black targeting, spells that target a creature that costs 2 mana, and then all the ones that cost 3 mana that would actually be 2 mana. Like seeing how cheap I could get really good ones. And there's some crazy stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
He reduces things by 2, doesn't he?
Uh-huh.
So stuff like Rend Flesh becomes just 1 mana, destroy a creature.
So many removal spells
Angelic
become
Purge.
1 mana. It's crazy.
So many removal spells just become really freaking good.
Oblivion Ring is 1 mana.
Oblivion Ring doesn't work because as a spell it doesn't target.
Oh, it does not target. Oh, because it enters the battlefield and then you exile. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. But you get like even bad cards like Buy Your Silence and like Secure the Scene. They become like okay-ish.
I mean, speaking of bad cards, like when you cast things for their alternate modes, like Mutate or Bestow, they now become a different type of spell that is now targeting.
Yeah, Mutate targets, Bestow targets.
And there's things like Howling Fury from Portal or something. They cost 2 generic and a black, and any one this is the text. Any one creature gets +4/+0 until the end of turn. So for a single black, you're basically quadrupling Killian's power or tripling his power for the turn.
I think my favorite thing from recent sets is like the randomness that is Rafine's Guidance.
Yeah.
Permanently 1 white mana. Like.
Yeah, that seems solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, Killian's got like.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd like to build it, and it's just
really?
I'll just have to have another Orzhov deck, I guess.
Really, Brad? You want to build an Orzhov deck?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
I can't escape it. I even intentionally thought about other colors today, and I still ended up there.
Still ended up on Orzhov.
Yep, sure did.
My Strixhaven Dex is one of the really incredibly unique ones that I just could not reproduce with any other commander. It's a Lorehold Apprentice.
Ooh, the Apprentice cycle's cool.
Yeah. This one's red-white. Every time you cast a spell, she gives all of your spirits the ability to tap to deal 1 damage. Now, there's no other card like this in the entire game.
No, this is it. Yeah.
Nothing could replace this commander.
Mm-hmm. And it's not legendary. Look at that. It's completely unique in a game of 50,000, unique cards.
20,000.
And it's not legendary. 20,000. Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, the Lorehold cycle in general was pretty powerful. There was a couple clunkers. I think the Izzet one was kind of a clunker, unless I'm thinking of the Pledge Mages. That's the one I'm thinking of. But the Apprentices are pretty good.
Izzet and the Orzhov. Yeah, Silver Quill. Those two as apprentices were kind of just straight up awful.
They were.
The other three are very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the Orzhov one gave you Magecraft. Okay.
Well, they all have Magecraft.
Oh, is that the word for all of them? It's just it's a different. Okay, yeah. Magecraft it's buffs its power.
Yeah, I think Silver Quill Apprentice gives +0/+1 or something like that. It might be the
+1.
+1/+0.
Yeah, +1/+0.
Yeah, but it's not even to the team. It's just a target.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
It's very, very.
Come on.
Yeah, and the Prismari Apprentice. If your spell you cast has mana value 5 or greater, it gets +1/+1 counter.
Oh, it gives counters. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it had the unblockable clause.
Yeah, if you cast an instant or sorcery, it can't be blocked, and if that spell is 5 or greater, you get a counter.
Okay.
Whew.
I think the thing that irritates me most about that is it only itself is unblockable. Target creature is unblockable. Come on.
Where the Lorehold one affects the whole team.
Yeah, the Lorehold one affects the whole team. The Witherbloom one is each opponent.
Yeah.
What is this nonsense? Why does this is even the issue I have with the legendary cycle of uncommons is Quintorius is insane, right? He's not a broken competitive commander, but he just has this unique ability of when things leave your graveyard, make a token.
Yeah.
Okay. Killian has that interesting ability of 2 less to cast. Dina has the first ability of whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1. I've never understood her sacrifice ability. I'm too dumb for sacrificing. But and then there's Zimone, which is budget Tatiova, right?
Yeah, it's fair Tatiova.
Exactly, she's still pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
But then you have Rutha, the Prisma, who just gets doesn't even get the short end of the stick. She just gets no stick.
She doesn't even have a stick.
Yeah, she doesn't even have a stick because it's like a 1/4 where you pay you already pay to get on the field, but then you pay more mana to put it in your hand to copy a spell.
Yeah,
and it has to be a spell you control. If I was copying my opponent's Cultivate, I'd be fine with this.
It just
but
kept getting worse every word you said about it.
this upsets me because, like, is it in Prismaria my colors? And the fact that they were, like, legitimately the worst of the guilds in that set just makes me so mad.
Yeah.
So, on the one hand, you have to be very careful disparaging Rutha, because I know the pals listen to this podcast and they're going to come for you.
Uh-oh. He's
You know
been
what?
pissing him off left and right this week. He came after him on Twitter.
But you know what? Pals, I have a challenge. If y'all are listening, if you have a solid Rutha list, please send it to me. You have my Twitter. Just send it to me, please.
Sniff has 3 Rutha lists. He's
Send
going to
them.
send you all
Send
of them.
all of them, because I want to see a legitimately good. Like I can see Rutha being good, where, like, you know, you get to copy removal spells like Lightning Bolt or copy bounce spells. But
no, you copy Flame Ring, or you copy the Harvest Fire that targets your Coal Hauler Swine.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, but like I just can't see it. I need inspiration. Because I have the other 4 built. I need to build Rutha, but every time I look at Rutha, I just get sad.
Just cry.
Sniff will absolutely inspire you.
All right, awesome.
On the other hand, so the pals coming after you is the one hand. On the other hand, when I was looking through my decks in preparation for this episode to figure out, like, which ones am I going to bring up as examples of decks that I couldn't just replace the commander, like, I was looking at League Guildmage and Izzet Guildmage. I have a deck for each of those, and I was thinking, like, I guess there's Rutha, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Oops.
Don't come after me, Sniff. I love you, but I like League Guildmage more than.
I don't blame you.
That's understandable. Oh, that was good stuff. Good stuff. I know we got a little sidetracked, but it was excellent conversation. I don't mind that. Did we have anything else you wanted to add to that? Any weird mechanics? Any new, different creatures to talk about? Anything? We actually covered a lot, like a lot of specific cards and detail and stuff. So
I don't think there's anything kind of specific left to add. I do want to say real quick, talking earlier about the PDH home base website. We're always going to probably point people there if they have, like, rules questions or, like, really kind of, like, basic questions, and they're not on Twitter to bug us. A lot of the mechanical examples we talked about are listed out in the PDH rules on their website, and they talk about them there in more detail, like how command attacks affects that stuff and all that. So, like, if you do have questions, you can go to that website, and then if you still have questions, poke us.
Yeah, get in on the Discord or Twitter. I know the Discord can be a little overwhelming because it's busy all the time.
Oh, my goodness, I have that.
It's just busy all the time.
I have all of them,
which is awesome. So it seems a little overwhelming, but I haven't run into any issues with anybody there. Like, everybody's willing to help you with your deck or talk rules or talk games or get in a game with you or whatever. Mm-hmm. Always a good time. We are pushing about an hour and 40 minutes here. I do think that'll put a wrap on episode 9 of the PDH Pod. I want to give a huge thanks to Brian and James from Casual Tryhards, who showed up Saturday for some PDH games. It was a good time. Listeners out there, if you want to find their podcast, you can find them at the Casual Tryhards. They are on YouTube, Casual Tryhard MTG, and on Twitter at Casual Trypod, TRYPOD. Tell them we sent you. We do want to thank everyone that tuned in this week, but in the meantime, if you need more Pauper Commander talk or have any questions you want to send us about the format, you can email the show at thepdhpod@gmail.com, or head on over, like we just said, to the PDH Homebase's website. That'll take you to their Discord. Or you can find Liam and I on Twitter at Pauper Command and Pauper_B. And as always, you can find Dave as the Alcadron just about anywhere else PDH is being talked about. I'll put all the links in the details below, so you shouldn't have to do much hunting and pecking. This should be all right there for you. And if you listen to this on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, and you actually like what we're doing, I think some people do, be so kind as to leave us a review. That'd be great. It does help our visibility quite a bit. And then I guess this is the last call for anything we may have missed. Anything come up in the last 15 seconds or so?
I got nothing.
Got nothing. All right. Well, episode 9 of the PDH Pod comes to a close. As always, we want to give a big thanks to MTG Brad for letting us use their original music. And from everyone in here to everyone out there, brew a deck, play some games, and we'll talk to you in about a week. Peace.
Cheers.
I brought Pauper decks to the party.